A low growl rumbled deep in the chest of the behemoth of a wolf, his fur a midnight cascade against the perpetual twilight of the ancient forest. His amber eyes, burning like twin embers, fixed on the trembling form of a deer, poised for flight. With a silent, predatory grace, he launched himself forward, a blur of raw power, his jaws closing around the deer's neck in a swift, merciless snap. The kill was clean, efficient, a testament to his dominance. He was Alpha, the strongest of his pack, and his every action resonated with an innate authority. His name was Kale. The air in the pack house vibrated with an anticipation so thick you could almost taste it, a mixture of celebratory spice and the musky scent of excited wolves. Tonight, under the glow of the full moon, was my coming-of-age ceremony. My name was Lyra, and everyone, absolutely everyone, expected me to shift. I stood by the large arched window, my fingers tracing the condensation on the cool glass. Outside, the moon, a colossal pearl in the velvet sky, cast an ethereal glow over the sprawling Silverwood Pack territory. Below, the pack members were already gathering, their excited chatter drifting up to my room. My stomach fluttered with a mixture of nerves and a deep, burgeoning excitement. I was powerful. Everyone said so. My lineage was impeccable, stretching back through generations of strong, wise Lunas. My parents, the current Alpha and Luna, were revered figures, their power and wisdom undeniable. And then there was Ethan, the Alpha 2B, my fated mate. His presence, even when he wasn't near, was a constant thrum beneath my skin, a resonant chord that promised a lifetime of connection. My reflection stared back at me in the darkened glass, a young woman with a mane of dark, wavy hair that tumbled down my back, eyes the color of moss after a spring rain, and a build that hinted at latent strength. I felt it, the power within me, a subtle hum beneath my skin, waiting, I believed, for the moon's call. I had spent my childhood watching other young wolves transform, their bodies elongating, muscles rippling under shifting fur, their human forms dissolving into the magnificent beasts of legend. I had envisioned my own transformation countless times, the exhilarating rush of power, the primal roar escaping my throat, the wind whipping through my newly formed fur as I ran alongside Ethan, a true Luna to his Alpha. But as the first rays of the full moon bathed my room in silver, a cold dread began to seep into my bones. The other young wolves, already gathered in the clearing below, began to shift, their joyous howls echoing through the night. Their clothes tore, their bones rearranged with an audible crack, and their human forms gave way to sleek, powerful wolves. Yet I remained still, utterly, frustratingly human. The hum beneath my skin, which I had so confidently interpreted as nascent power, remained just that, a hum, nothing more. Panic, cold, and sharp began to prickle at my skin. I pressed my hands against the window pane, my breath fogging the glass. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Why wasn't it happening? Why wasn't I shifting? The celebratory chatter from below began to fade, replaced by a confused silence, a growing tension that I could feel even from within the confines of my room. My parents, who had been waiting for me to join the ceremony, would be wondering. Ethan, his eyes, I imagined, searching for me in the crowd, would be wondering. The door creaked open, and my mother, Ilara, stepped in, her usually serene face etched with a mixture of concern and bewilderment. Her own wolf, a majestic silver creature, was always close to the surface, her scent a comforting anchor. But tonight, even her presence offered little solace. Her gaze swept over me, searching, questioning. "Lyra?" she whispered, her voice laced with an uncertainty I had never heard before. "Why haven't you come down?" I turned, my voice catching in my throat. I can't, Mother. I don't. I can't shift." The words felt like a betrayal, a confession of an unforgivable flaw. Ilara's eyes widened, a flicker of something akin to fear crossing her features. She moved swiftly to my side, her hands gently touching my face, her touch cool against my feverish skin. She focused, her mind reaching out, seeking my wolf, her own power trying to coax mine to the surface. I felt a faint pressure, a gentle nudge, but nothing, absolutely nothing stirred within me. Her brow furrowed, a deep crease of worry forming between her elegant eyebrows. This is impossible," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "A noble Borna, fated to the Alpha, it has to be a delay. Perhaps you're simply nervous." But I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it wasn't nerves. It was something else entirely. The shame, a bitter, acidic taste, began to spread through me, curdling in my stomach. Everyone expected me to become Luna. I was meant to be Luna. And now I was broken. The days that followed were a blur of hushed whispers and averted gazes. The celebratory atmosphere of the pack house had dissipated, replaced by a suffocating silence. My parents, though outwardly supportive, carried a visible weight of disappointment. Their once vibrant expressions were now clouded with a perpetual worry. They consulted elders, sought out healers, their efforts a desperate attempt to rectify what they perceived as a tragic anomaly. But every attempt yielded the same result: nothing. I remained stubbornly, irredeemably human. The whispers followed me like a shadow. The Alpha's daughter she can't shift. A Luna who can't protect her pack unthinkable. Is the fated bond truly valid if one half is incomplete? These words, delivered in hushed tones, yet always loud enough for me to overhear, chipped away at my spirit, leaving me raw and exposed. The shame deepened, festering into a constant ache in my chest. I avoided communal meals, preferring the solitude of my room, where the whispers couldn't reach me, where the pitying glances couldn't find me. Ethan, my fated mate, was a constant, if conflicted, presence. He visited me daily, his handsome face a mosque of concern. He would hold my hands, his touch warm and reassuring, and tell me that it didn't matter, that he loved me regardless. But I could see the subtle shift in his eyes, the almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw when the topic of the Luna duties came up. His wolf, a magnificent creature of power and loyalty, yearned for its counterpart, for the Luna who would stand by his side, equally powerful, equally capable of leading the pack. I felt the unspoken question in his touch, the unspoken yearning in his gaze. Could he truly lead a pack with a Luna who couldn't shift, who couldn't defend herself, let alone them? One particularly gray afternoon, Ethan found me by the river, skipping stones across the glassy surface of the water. The familiar scent of pine and damp earth clung to him as he approached, his footsteps soft on the mossy ground. He sat beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. "Lyra," he began, his voice gentle. "My parents, the elders, they're concerned." I knew what was coming. I had braced myself for it, yet the words still felt like a physical blow. "They think you should reject me, don't they?" My voice was barely a whisper, a fragile thing that threatened to shatter. Ethan's gaze met mine, his amber eyes filled with a pain that mirrored my own. They say a Luna must be strong. A Luna must be able to shift, to protect the pack. Especially now, with the rising tensions with the Ironwood pack. The Ironwood pack, a formidable and aggressive rival, had been making increasingly bold incursions into our territory. The threat of war, a dark cloud on the horizon, had been looming for months. A Luna who couldn't shift in such times was a liability, a weakness. "I understand," I said, the words feeling foreign and heavy on my tongue. I turned away, the beauty of the river blurring through unshed tears. "You don't have to pretend, Ethan. I know what I am. I'm broken." He reached out, his hand covering mine, his touch warm and steady. "You are not broken, Lyra. Never say that." But even as he spoke the words, I could feel the conflict within him, the tension between his innate loyalty to me and his duty to his pack. The bond, the powerful, undeniable connection between fated mates, still pulsed between us, a vibrant, unbroken thread. It was a cruel irony the bond remained, yet I was incomplete, a half of a whole that could never truly be. The rejection, when it came, was not a grand pronouncement or a public spectacle. It was a quiet conversation, a painful acknowledgement of an unavoidable truth. Ethan, his face pale and drawn, stood before me in my room, his hand still warm from having just held mine. His eyes, usually so vibrant, were shadowed with regret. "Lyra," he said, his voice husky with emotion. I have to release you from our bond. For the pack, for my duty as alpha." My breath hitched. The words, though expected, still tore through me, leaving a gaping wound. It was a rejection not of my person, but of my inability to fulfill a role, to meet an expectation that was beyond my control. The pain was immense, a physical agony that stole my breath. I felt a sharp, searing tear within my chest, as if a part of my very soul was being ripped away. But strangely, beneath the agony, there was a flicker of something else, a cold, hard resolve. If I wasn't meant to be Luna, then what was I meant to be? And why did the bond, though fractured by Ethan's words, not completely sever? A faint, almost imperceptible warmth still lingered, a phantom echo of what was. It was a strange, unsettling paradox. With a heavy heart, I nodded, unable to speak, unable to form a coherent thought beyond the crushing weight of my new reality. Ethan, his eyes brimming with unshed tears, turned and left, closing the door behind him with a soft click that echoed like a final goodbye. The silence that followed was deafening. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in my life. The shame was still there, but beneath it, a tiny, defiant ember began to glow. If I was no longer bound by the expectations of the Luna, then perhaps I was finally free to find out who I truly was. With the formal rejection, a strange, liberating emptiness settled within me. The constant pressure to be the perfect Luna, to fit into a mold that clearly wasn't mine, had been lifted. The pain of Ethan's rejection still gnawed at me, a dull ache that surfaced in unexpected moments, but it was no longer a suffocating blanket. It was a scar forming, a testament to a wound that would eventually heal. I retreated further into myself, spending my days in the Pack Library, a vast collection of ancient texts and forgotten lore. I devoured every scroll, every brittle page, searching for answers, for any explanation for my unique predicament. The official histories, the well-trodden narratives of werewolf society, offered nothing. Every text reiterated the fundamental truth. A true werewolf shifted at their coming of age. There were no exceptions, no tales of those who remained human. But I was an exception. My search led me to the forbidden section, a dusty, dimly lit corner of the library that held scrolls deemed too dangerous, too heretical for the general pack to access. They spoke of ancient times, of a world before the packs, when magic was raw and untamed. They whispered of beings beyond the wolf, creatures of forgotten power, elements, and shadows. One particular scroll, brittle with age and bound in dark, unfamiliar leather, caught my eye. Its title, written in a language I dimly recognized as a precursor to our common tongue, seemed to hum with a faint energy. The Song of the First Shapers. I unrolled it carefully, the parchment crackling under my touch. The script was intricate, flowing, and unlike anything I had ever seen. As I read, a strange sense of recognition began to stir within me, a faint echo of something long forgotten. The scroll spoke of beings who could manipulate the very fabric of the world, not through shifts into animal forms, but through an innate connection to the earth, the sky, the elements themselves. They were not wolves, nor bears, nor any creature known to the modern packs. They were something else entirely, something primordial. The text described their connection to the earth as a resonant hum, a vibration that resonated with life itself. It spoke of their ability to draw power from the natural world, to mend and to destroy, to create and to unravel. As I read, a familiar sensation prickled at my skin, the same hum I had felt all my life, the one I had mistaken for the stirrings of my wolf. It wasn't the call of a beast, it was the whisper of something far older, far more profound. One passage, in particular, made my blood run cold. And when the balance is disturbed, when the shadows lengthen and the moon bleeds crimson, the shapers shall awaken. But they are hunted, for their power is coveted, and their existence threatens the established order. Hunted. My mind reeled. If I was one of these shapers, then I wasn't merely an anomaly, I was a target. The implications were terrifying. The world I knew, the world of packs and alphas and lunas, was built on a foundation of shifting. A human-shaped being with powers beyond their comprehension would be seen as an abomination, a threat to their very existence. I closed the scroll, my hands trembling. The faint hum beneath my skin seemed to intensify, confirming my growing suspicions. I wasn't broken. I was something else. Something ancient, dangerous, and hunted. But thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. The shame, which had been a constant companion, began to recede, replaced by a fierce determination. I had to understand this. I had to understand myself. My studies became a solitary obsession. I delved deeper into the forbidden texts, piecing together fragments of information, slowly, painstakingly, constructing a new understanding of my identity. I learned that the shapers were not bound by the lunar cycles, nor did they require a shift in the traditional sense. Their power was an extension of themselves, a silent language they spoke with the world. One evening, while poring over a particularly cryptic diagram, a faint tremor ran through the pack house. It was quickly followed by a guttural roar, a sound of fury and pain that I knew intimately. The Ironwood pack. The war had begun. I rushed to the window, my heart pounding. Below, the clearing was a chaotic tableau of snarling wolves and desperate defenders. The air was thick with the scent of pine, blood, and fear. Our warriors, magnificent in their wolf forms, fought bravely, but the Ironwood pack was relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Kale, our alpha, was a whirlwind of power, his black fur a stark contrast to the dust and blood. But even he seemed to be struggling against the sheer force of the invasion. My parents, both shifted into their powerful wolf forms, were in the thick of the battle, their roars of defiance echoing through the night. I watched, helpless, as a massive, scarred, ironwood wolf lunged at my mother, her silver fur stained with blood. My father, distracted by another attacker, couldn't reach her in time. A primal scream tore from my throat. A surge of raw, untamed energy erupted from within me. Hot and electric, an invisible force that shimmered around me. My hands, without conscious thought, shot forward, and a wave of concentrated force, unseen but undeniably potent, slammed into the attacking wolf. It was thrown backwards, skidding across the ground with a yelp of surprise and pain, its focus momentarily diverted from my mother. The effect was instantaneous and terrifying. The power, which had been dormant for so long, had finally awakened. It wasn't a shift, not in the way I had always expected. It was something else entirely. It was me. The battle raged, a symphony of snarls, growls, and the sickening thud of bodies colliding. The brief, unexpected surge of power that had erupted from me was enough to momentarily stun the Ironwood wolf, allowing my mother to regain her footing and retaliate with a swift, powerful bite. The attacker whimpered and retreated, melting back into the chaos. The realization of what I had done, the sheer, undeniable force I had wielded, sent a jolt through me. It wasn't a fluke. It was real. The hum, the silent language of the Shapers, resonated through every fiber of my being now, louder, clearer, more insistent than ever before. I felt a connection to the very earth beneath me, to the swirling winds, to the ancient trees that ringed our territory. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a world of unseen energies, a tapestry woven with elemental forces. My eyes, usually a calm green, now seemed to shimmer with an inner light. I felt the tremors of the earth as the wolves fought, the sharp sting of the wind as it whipped through the clearing, the subtle shift in the air pressure. It was overwhelming, a cacophony of sensations that threatened to consume me. But amidst the chaos, a core of calm began to form, a realization that this power, this inherent connection, was not a weakness, but a strength beyond anything I had ever imagined. I focused, drawing upon the instincts that seemed to surge from somewhere deep within me. My hand stretched out again, not in an aimless gesture, but with a deliberate intent. I felt the air gather, swirling around my palms, coalescing into a tangible force. A torrent of wind, sharp and biting, erupted from my hands, slamming into a group of approaching ironwood wolves, knocking them off their feet and sending them tumbling backward. Their surprise was palpable, their confused whimpers echoing through the battleground. Panic and awe warred within me. I was doing this. Me. Lyra, the one who couldn't shift. My father, Kale, a whirlwind of black fur and amber eyes, paused in his brutal dance, his gaze briefly meeting mine across the chaotic clearing. A flicker of disbelief, then a dawning comprehension, crossed his features. He didn't question it, not in that moment. He simply acknowledged it with a slight nod, a silent recognition of the impossible. Then, with renewed ferocity, he plunged back into the fray. I continued to push, to test the limits of this newfound power. A group of ironwood wolves attempted to flank our warriors, their dark forms blending with the shadows. I reached out, my mind focusing on the earth beneath them. With a concentrated effort, the ground beneath their paws buckled, cracks appearing in the solid earth, causing them to stumble and lose their momentum. Our warriors, seizing the opportunity, surged forward, pushing them back. The battle was a swirling vortex of energy, and I, for the first time, felt truly a part of it, not as a helpless bystander, but as a silent, unseen force, tipping the scales. I wasn't fighting with teeth and claws, but with the very elements. I was not a wolf, but I was powerful. My mother, her silver fur matted with dust and a fresh wound bleeding on her shoulder, limped towards me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. She reverted to her human form, her voice hoarse. "Lyra." "What was that?" I shook my head, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The exertion was immense, but the adrenaline still coursed through me, a heady rush of exhilaration. "I don't know, Mother, but I think I know why I can't shift." I looked at her, my eyes blazing with a newfound conviction. "I'm not broken. I'm something else." The Ironwood pack, surprised by the sudden, inexplicable resistance from the human side, began to falter. Their advance, once relentless, now wavered. They communicated through low growls and frantic movements, their leader, a hulking brute with a scarred eye, clearly frustrated. He let out a furious snarl, signaling a retreat. The remaining ironwood wolves, battered and confused, turned and fled back into the depths of the forest, leaving behind a trail of blood and defeated pride. The clearing was a scene of devastation. Injured warriors lay groaning, their fur matted with blood and dirt. The scent of fear slowly began to dissipate, replaced by the grim reality of the aftermath. My parents, their human forms restored, rushed to attend to the wounded. Kale, his face grim, surveyed the damage, his eyes still occasionally darting towards me, a silent question lingering in their depths. Ethan, his wolf form still shimmering with the residual energy of battle, approached me cautiously. He shifted back, his clothes appearing as if from nowhere, clinging to his powerful frame. His eyes, usually so clear, were clouded with a complex mix of emotions, shock, confusion, and a hint of something akin to awe. "Lyra," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "What did you do?" I met his gaze, no longer feeling the sting of rejection, but a strange sense of defiance. "I protected my pack, Ethan. I just did it differently." The lingering warmth of our fractured bond, which had been a subtle thrum for days, now pulsed with a new intensity. It wasn't a romantic longing, not any more, but a profound connection born of shared experience, of a nascent understanding. It was different, but it was still there. And for the first time, I realized that perhaps being broken was simply a matter of perspective. The aftermath of the battle was a period of tense recovery. The injured were tended to, the dead mourned, and the defenses strengthened. But beneath the surface of everyday life, a new undercurrent pulsed through the Silverwood pack. Me. My inability to shift, once a source of shame and pity, was now viewed with a mixture of bewilderment and hesitant respect. The whispers still followed me, but their tone had shifted. They were no longer whispers of pity, but whispers of wonder, of curiosity, of a hesitant fear. My parents, particularly Kale, sought me out constantly. They bombarded me with questions, their eyes searching for answers I barely understood myself. I tried to explain, to articulate the humming energy, the connection to the elements, but it was difficult to convey something so intrinsically felt, so fundamentally different from their own experiences. They understood power, but they understood it in terms of teeth and claws, of raw, animalistic strength. My power was quieter, more subtle, yet undeniably potent. It's like I can feel the world, I tried to explain to my father one evening, as we stood on a rocky outcrop overlooking the territory. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of fiery orange and deep violet, and the wind whispered ancient secrets through the trees. I can feel the earth breathing, the air moving, the water flowing, and I can't influence it. Kale, his large frame silhouetted against the dying light, was silent for a long moment. His wolf eyes, accustomed to seeing only what was tangible, seemed to be struggling to grasp the abstract. "You're telling me you moved that wolf with your mind?" he finally asked, his voice rough with disbelief. "Not my mind exactly," I clarified, still grappling with the language myself. "It's more like an extension of myself, a natural force, like how you draw upon your wolf. It's just a different," he grunted, a sound of contemplation. "The elders are confused," he admitted. "They've never seen anything like it. Some believe it's a trick, a forbidden magic." "It's not magic," I insisted, a sudden fierce protectiveness rising within me. "It's just who I am." I told him about the ancient scrolls, the first shapers, the idea that I wasn't broken, but born into a different lineage. Kale listened intently, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he looked out at the darkening forest, his gaze distant. "The legends they speak of ancient ones, powerful beings that existed before the packs. They were hunted, those legends say, feared for their power. They were thought to be extinct." His voice was low, almost a whisper. "If you are one of them, Lyra, you are in great danger." His words sent a chill down my spine, confirming the chilling prophecy from the scroll. "Hunted, for their power is coveted, and their existence threatens the established order." The knowledge that I was a shaper, while empowering, also carried a heavy burden. It meant I was a target, not just from rival packs, but from something far older, far more dangerous. The realization solidified my resolve. I had to understand this power, to control it, to defend myself. I couldn't be a liability, not to my pack, not to myself. My training began in earnest, though it was a solitary, self-guided journey. I spent hours in the deepest parts of the forest, far from prying eyes, experimenting with my abilities. I started small, coaxing the gentle breeze into a gust, making water droplets dance on leaves, causing small pebbles to levitate. Each success, no matter how minor, was a thrilling affirmation. A step closer to understanding this intrinsic part of myself. I learned to focus, to quiet the overwhelming sensory input, to channel the energy that hummed beneath my skin. It was exhausting, both mentally and physically, but also profoundly fulfilling. I discovered that my emotions played a crucial role in my control. Fear and anger made the power erratic, unpredictable. Calmness and focus allowed for precision and strength. One afternoon, while practicing by a secluded waterfall, a powerful gust of wind, far stronger than I had intended, ripped through the trees, sending leaves scattering like startled birds. I lost control, and the force of the wind slammed into my own body, throwing me backward against a mossy rock. The impact left me breathless, a searing pain shooting through my back. "Lyra!" a voice cried out. "Ethan." He emerged from the dense foliage, his face etched with alarm. He must have been patrolling the area. He rushed to my side, his hands hovering over me, unsure how to help. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. I nodded, wincing as I tried to sit up. I'm fine, just miscalculated. He helped me to my feet, his touch gentle. Our eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, the old intimacy, the easy comfort, returned. But it was fleeting. The unspoken truth of our fractured bond hung between us, a silent acknowledgement of what we had lost. You're getting stronger, he observed, his gaze sweeping over the disturbed foliage, the agitated water of the stream. But it's dangerous, Lyra. What if someone sees you? I have to learn, I said, my voice firm. I can't be helpless again. Not with war looming. I looked at him, my resolve clear. And if what the scrolls say is true, I'm in more danger than you can imagine. I have to protect myself. He nodded slowly, a somber expression on his face. Then let me help you. In any way I can. It wasn't a romantic plea, but an offer of solidarity, a renewed sense of partnership born of a shared threat. Our bond, though irrevocably changed, was not entirely broken. It had simply evolved into something different, something perhaps stronger in its new form. A bond of mutual respect and survival. Ethan's offer of assistance, while not what I had expected, proved invaluable. He became my silent guardian, his keen wolf senses providing an invaluable layer of protection during my solitary training sessions. He would scout the perimeter, his presence a silent sentinel, allowing me to focus entirely on honing my abilities. He didn't understand the intricacies of my power, but he understood the need for strength, for defense. He learned to anticipate my movements, to discern the subtle shifts in the air when I was about to unleash a surge of power, and he offered practical advice on tactical thinking, on positioning, on how to utilize the terrain to my advantage. His acceptance, though still tinged with a lingering uncertainty, was a powerful balm to my bruised spirit. He didn't try to change me, didn't question the fundamental nature of my abilities. He simply watched, learned, and adapted. Our conversations, once filled with the hesitant dance of fated mates, now revolved around strategy, observation, and the delicate balance of power. We were no longer simply Lyra and Ethan. We were two beings, each with unique strengths, preparing for an uncertain future. The threat of the Ironwood Pack escalated. Border skirmishes became more frequent, their attacks bolder, their intent to expand their territory undeniable. The pack house was a hub of activity. Warriors training relentlessly, patrols doubled, and the air thick with tension. Kale, burdened by the escalating conflict, spent countless hours strategizing with his Beta and Gamma. My new, unconventional abilities, though still largely unknown to the wider pack, were beginning to be considered as a potential asset. One late evening, as I was practicing controlling the flow of a small stream in a secluded grotto, causing the water to rise and fall with my will, Ethan appeared at the edge of the clearing, his face grim. "Lyra," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We have a problem. A large Ironwood scouting party has been spotted deep in our territory. They're too close to the Elder's Glade." The Elder's Glade was a sacred place, a repository of ancient lore and a sanctuary for the pack's oldest and most vulnerable members. It was traditionally considered neutral ground, but in times of war, such agreements often crumbled. "How many?" I asked, my heart quickening. At least 10. And they're moving fast. Our patrol is too far out to intercept them in time." A cold dread settled in my stomach. 10 highly trained Ironwood warriors against a handful of elders and a few younger, inexperienced sentinels. The odds were stacked against us. "We have to go," I said, my voice firm. Ethan nodded, his jaw set. "My father is gathering a larger force, but they won't make it in time. We're the closest." We ran through the shadowed forest, the familiar paths blurring beneath my feet. My senses were heightened, the hum of my power a constant thrum, ready to be unleashed. I felt the subtle vibrations of the ironwood wolves pause on the earth, the shift in the air as they moved. My awareness expanded, encompassing the forest around me, turning it into an extension of my senses. As we neared the glade, the air grew thick with the scent of fear and the acrid stench of aggressive wolves. We heard the snarls, the sounds of struggle. They were already there. "Stay hidden," Ethan whispered, his wolf senses already pinpointing the enemy. "I'll draw their attention. You do what you do best." He launched himself into the clearing, a magnificent blur of power, his growl a thunderous roar that immediately drew the attention of the ironwood invaders. They turned, surprised by his sudden appearance, their focus momentarily diverted from the terrified elders huddled behind ancient trees. I moved silently, weaving through the dense undergrowth, my presence almost ethereal. My power pulsed, ready. I could feel the individual energies of the ironwood wolves, their aggressive intent, their predatory focus. I chose my targets carefully. One large ironwood wolf was attempting to break through a makeshift barricade of fallen logs, his jaws tearing at the wood. I extended my hand, my mind focusing on the earth beneath him. With a silent command, a surge of force erupted, sending a spray of loose earth and small stones upward, directly into his face. He yelped, startled, his eyes momentarily blinded, giving the elder behind the barricade precious seconds to retreat further. Another wolf, larger and more menacing, lunged at Ethan, who was already engaged with two others. Without a moment's hesitation, I focused on the air around the attacking wolf. I constricted it, not with physical force, but with an invisible pressure, causing it to gasp, its lungs suddenly starved for oxygen. It stumbled, struggling to breathe, its attack faltering. Ethan, recognizing the opportunity, delivered a swift, incapacitating blow. I was a phantom in the battle, an unseen hand, a silent force. I didn't engage directly, but I disrupted, disoriented, and disabled. I sent gusts of wind to trip them, made the ground beneath their paws unsteady, and created small, localized disturbances in their senses, blurring their vision, muffling their hearing. They were confused, their movements becoming erratic, their confidence wavering as they faced an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't smell, couldn't understand. The ironwood leader, the scarred brute from the previous battle, let out a frustrated snarl. He seemed to sense my presence, his eyes darting around the clearing, searching for the source of the inexplicable interference. He was a seasoned warrior, accustomed to direct confrontation, and this unseen resistance clearly unnerved him. He spotted me then, a flicker of movement behind a thick oak tree. His eyes narrowed, a guttural growl rumbling in his chest. He shifted his focus, his powerful frame tensing, and charged directly at me, his intention clear, to eliminate the anomaly. My heart hammered against my ribs, but a strange calm settled over me. This was it. Direct confrontation. I couldn't run, couldn't hide. I had to face him. As he lunged, I raised my hands, my power surging, not a random burst, but a focused, controlled torrent. I pulled at the air around him, creating a powerful, invisible vortex, spinning him violently in midair. He roared in confusion, his body flailing, unable to regain his footing. Then, with a mighty push, I flung him backward with immense force, sending him crashing into a cluster of trees. The impact was sickening, a crack echoing through the clearing. He lay there, still and silent, a crumpled heap of fur and muscle. The remaining ironwood wolves, witnessing the inexplicable defeat of their leader, hesitated, their aggression dissolving into fear. The arrival of Kale and his larger force, their howls echoing through the forest, sealed their decision. They turned and fled, their tails tucked, their retreat a desperate scramble for survival. Silence descended upon the glade, broken only by the ragged breathing of our warriors and the frightened whimpers of the elders. Ethan, his body bruised but his eyes alight with triumph, rushed to my side. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip firm. "Lyra, you did it. You saved them. You saved us." I looked at the crumpled form of the ironwood leader, a shiver running through me. I had wielded such immense power. And for the first time, I felt a deep, abiding connection to the world around me, a sense of belonging that transcended the simple binary of human and wolf. I was not meant to be Luna. I was meant to be something else entirely, and that something else was formidable. The relief that washed over the Silverwood pack was palpable. The Elder's Glade, our sacred sanctuary, had been protected. The Ironwood pack's leader, though not dead, was severely injured and would be out of commission for a considerable time. This victory, fueled by my unconventional abilities, instilled a newfound confidence in our ranks, a sense of hope that had been dwindling under the relentless pressure of the encroaching war. But with recognition came further scrutiny. My actions in the glade, impossible to ignore, had left the pack in a state of bewildered awe. The whispers surrounding me intensified, no longer just curious, but imbued with a mixture of fear and reverence. I was no longer just the Alpha's daughter who couldn't shift. I was Lyra, the silent force, the one who moved mountains, or at least wolves without a touch. Kale, my father, called for an emergency council meeting. The most respected elders, the Beta and the Gamma, gathered in the echoing silence of the council chamber. The air was thick with the scent of aged parchment and unspoken questions. I stood before them, my head held high, no longer feeling the sting of shame, but a quiet strength. "Lyra," my father began, his voice solemn, "what we witnessed, what you did it, defies all we know of our kind. Explain this power to us." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I believe I am a shaper, father, not a wolf. An ancient lineage, capable of manipulating the elements, of interacting with the very fabric of nature." I then recounted the information I had gleaned from the forbidden scrolls, explaining the hum beneath my skin, the innate connection, the ability to control wind, earth, and even subtle shifts in perception. I spoke of the warnings, of the shapers being hunted, of their existence threatening the established order of the wolf packs. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Their faces, usually etched with ancient wisdom, now held a mixture of fear and outright disbelief. One elder, Old Man Thorn, his eyes clouded with age, spoke, his voice raspy. "These are old tales, Lyra. Whispers of forbidden magic. They were suppressed for a reason. Such power, it is unnatural. It is dangerous." "Perhaps," I conceded, "but also powerful. It saved the elders, Old Man Thorn. It saved us from the Ironwood pack. It is not the way of the wolf." Another elder, Maeve, exclaimed, her voice sharp with apprehension. "Our strength comes from our shift, from our unity as a pack. This is something else entirely. Something alien." Kale held up a hand, silencing the murmurs. "We cannot deny what we witnessed. Lyra saved lives. Her abilities, whatever their origin, are real. The question is, how do we proceed? Ethan, who had been sitting quietly beside his father, the beta, spoke up, his voice clear and resonant. We need her. The Ironwood Pack will return. Stronger. They will seek revenge for their leader. We need every advantage we can get. He looked at me, his gaze firm. Lyra has proven her loyalty. She has proven her strength. We need to embrace this, not fear it. His words, a powerful endorsement, resonated with some of the younger council members. But the older generation, deeply rooted in tradition, remained wary. Her existence threatens the very foundation of our society, Old Man Thorne insisted. If word gets out, other packs will either seek to control her or to eliminate her. She is a liability. A liability? I interjected, my voice rising with indignation. I fought for this pack. I bled for this pack. My father, sensing the rising tension, intervened. Enough. We will not condemn Lyra, but we must understand what this means. We will keep this a secret within the pack. No outsider must know of Lyra's true nature. And Lyra, you will continue to train, like you will do so with even greater discretion. We cannot risk exposing you, or us, to an unknown threat. The council meeting concluded with a fragile consensus. My secret would be guarded, my power acknowledged, but my integration into the pack's defense efforts would be a clandestine operation. I was both an asset and a burden, a protector and a potential vulnerability. The knowledge that I was hunted, that my existence was a threat to the established order, settled deeper into my consciousness. The war was no longer just about territories, it was about my very survival. Over the next few weeks, my training intensified. Ethan, now my dedicated partner, helped me refine my abilities, pushing me to greater levels of control and precision. We explored the subtle nuances of elemental manipulation. I learned to create localized tremors to destabilize an opponent, to conjure thick mists to obscure vision, to intensify sounds to disorient, and to project defensive barriers of pure force. It was exhilarating, empowering, and utterly exhausting. One evening, while practicing the creation of a force field, a deep, unsettling vibration rippled through the earth. It wasn't a natural tremor, but a deliberate, powerful movement. Ethan, his wolf senses instantly alert, stiffened beside me. Something's coming, he growled, his eyes scanning the horizon. And it's not the Ironwood Pack. The air crackled with a strange, unnatural energy. A cold, heavy presence that felt alien to the familiar forest. A faint, almost imperceptible hum resonated with my own power, but it was distorted, tainted with something dark and menacing. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a wolf. This was something else. Something from the ancient stories. Something that hunted shapers. The air grew heavy, the familiar scent of pine and damp earth replaced by a cloying metallic tang. The hum of my power, usually a comforting thrum, now vibrated with an unsettling urgency. A warning. Ethan's wolf form, shimmering into existence beside me, bristled, his hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. His amber eyes, usually so fierce, held a flicker of something akin to primal fear. "It's not a wolf," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the growing, ominous silence of the forest. The birds had stopped singing, The insects had ceased their chirping. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. A shadow detached itself from the deepening gloom of the tree line. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, too swift, too silent for any creature I knew. It was vaguely humanoid, tall and slender, yet its form seemed to ripple, to shift, as if constantly reforming. Its skin, if it was skin, was the color of polished obsidian, absorbing the last vestiges of twilight. Its eyes, twin points of cold silver light, fixed on me with an unsettling intensity. They were ancient, soulless, and utterly devoid of emotion. Ethan lunged forward, a roar of defiance tearing from his throat. He was a paragon of wolf power, a testament to generations of alpha strength. But as he closed the distance, the shadow simply raised a hand, and Ethan, mid-leap, was halted, suspended in the air by an invisible force. He struggled, his muscles straining, but he was held captive, unable to move, unable to attack. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. This was a shaper, but not like me. This was something darker, something twisted. The hum of its power was a dissonant chord against my own, a discordant note in the symphony of the world. It was a shaper of shadow, of suppression, of anti-life. The shaper blood awakens. A voice, cold and ancient, echoed in my mind, not through my ears, but directly into my thoughts. It was a voice that resonated with the silence of forgotten ages. We have been searching for generations. I knew, with a horrifying certainty, that this was one of the hunters my ancestors had warned of. This was the entity that sought to control or destroy those like me. I focused, my power surging, instinctively reaching for the earth, for the air, for anything to combat this oppressive force. I slammed a wave of pure kinetic energy at the shadow, but it simply rippled, absorbing the impact as if it were nothing more than a gentle breeze. Futile, the voice echoed again, devoid of malice, simply stating a fact. Your power is nascent. Mine has been cultivated through millennia. It released Ethan, who crumpled to the ground, gasping for breath, his wolf form flickering back to his human shape, bruised and disoriented. The shadow's gaze, those chilling silver eyes, never left me. Come, the voice commanded, its power seeping into my very bones, urging obedience. You belong to us. I stumbled backward, terror giving way to a surge of defiant energy. I wouldn't surrender. I wouldn't be taken. I would fight. I manifested a powerful gust of wind, sharp and cutting, aiming it directly at the shadow's face. It was stronger than anything I had produced before, a desperate surge of power. The shadow recoiled slightly, the dark energy around it rippling more intensely. A faint, almost imperceptible flicker of something akin to annoyance crossed its otherwise expressionless features. A spirited one, the voice observed, a hint of something that might have been amusement in its ancient tone. Good. Stronger vessels are preferred. It moved, faster than sight, appearing before me in an instant. A cold, slender hand, unnervingly smooth, reached out and clamped around my wrist. The touch was like ice, and a searing pain shot through me, an agonizing drain on my very essence. My power flickered, struggling against the oppressive force, threatening to extinguish completely. I screamed, not from fear, but from the violation, the stripping away of my identity. Ethan, regaining his composure, struggled to his feet, a guttural roar of fury tearing from his throat. He lunged again, ignoring his own pain, his loyalty overriding all fear. But the shadow simply tightened its grip on my wrist, and a dark tendril of energy lashed out, wrapping around Ethan's throat, lifting him effortlessly into the air. He choked, his face turning purple, his struggles growing weaker. "Stop!" I cried, my voice raw with desperation. "Don't hurt him!" The shadow paused, its silver eyes fixing on mine. "You care for this wolf?" the voice inquired, a hint of curiosity in its flat tone. "A curious attachment for one of your kind." "Let him go," I pleaded, the pain in my wrist intensifying, but my focus now entirely on Ethan. "Surrender, and he lives," the shadow stated, its voice chillingly calm. "Resist, and he dies. And then you will be taken anyway." A terrible choice. My newfound power, my burgeoning identity, pitted against the life of the only person who had truly accepted me, who had stood by me when everyone else doubted. With a heavy heart, a decision that tore at my very soul, I forced out the words. I surrender." The shadow's grip on my wrist eased slightly, and the dark tendril released Ethan, who fell to the ground, gasping, clutching his throat. The shadow's silver eyes, however, still held mine, a silent victory gleaming within their depths. "Wise choice," the voice echoed. "You will come with me. You will learn of your true heritage, and you will serve the first hunters." My world, which had just begun to make sense, fractured once more. I was not broken, but I was not free. I was a shaper, and I was now a captive. The grip on my wrist remained, a cold, constant reminder of my captivity. The shadow, which called itself a first hunter, led me through the forest, its steps unnervingly silent, its presence radiating an oppressive aura that silenced the natural world around us. Ethan, still coughing and bruised, tried to follow, but the shadow simply intensified the oppressive energy around us, creating an invisible barrier that kept him at bay. He roared my name, a sound of anguish and fury, but his pleas were swallowed by the growing distance. I could only offer him a silent, desperate look before we vanished into the depths of the night. The journey was disorienting, a blur of movement that felt less like walking and more like being pulled through a distorted reality. The forest, familiar to me in every rustle and scent, twisted and warped around us, its ancient trees becoming grotesque, silent witnesses to my abduction. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, as if we were moving into a place untouched by sun or moon. We arrived at a cavern, not carved by water or earth, but seemingly hollowed out of pure shadow. The entrance was a jagged maw, shrouded in an unnatural darkness that seemed to absorb all light. Inside, the air was still and cold, tasting of ancient dust and stagnant power. Luminescent fungi cast an eerie, sickly green glow, revealing vast, echoing chambers and towering crystalline structures that pulsed with a faint, dark energy. Other figures, shrouded in similar shadows, moved silently within the cavern. They were like the one who had taken me, tall, slender, with eyes of cold silver light. They moved with a detached efficiency, their movements fluid and unsettling. They were more numerous than I had imagined, a hidden society thriving in the depths, away from the world of wolves and men. My captor led me deeper into the cavern, through winding passages and vast, silent halls. The constant hum of my own power, which had been struggling against the shadow's oppressive grip, began to flicker, growing weaker with each step. It was as if this place, this deep, ancient earth, was draining me, siphoning away my very essence. We arrived at a central chamber, vast and open, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center, a towering crystalline structure pulsed with a dark rhythmic beat, like a giant malevolent heart. Around it, other shadowy figures, larger and older, seemed to be performing some arcane ritual, their hands moving in slow, deliberate gestures, their silent voices echoing in my mind with whispers of power and control. My captor pushed me forward, my knees threatening to buckle. The awakened shaper, its voice resonated in the minds of the others, a silent announcement. The other shadows turned, their silver eyes fixing on me with a chilling intensity. They were judging me, assessing me, as if I were a specimen under a microscope. A wave of profound vulnerability washed over me, a feeling of being utterly exposed and powerless. "She is young," one of the larger shadows communicated, its voice deeper, more resonant than my captor's. "But strong. Her resonance is vibrant." "She chose the path of the wolf," another chimed in, a note of disdain in its mental tone. "A waste of potential." My captor, who I now mentally referred to as the first hunter to distinguish him from the others, stepped forward. "She will be re-educated. Her loyalties will be shifted. She will learn her true purpose." They spoke of me as if I were an object, a resource to be exploited. A surge of defiant anger, hot and sharp, flared within me. I was not an object. I was Lyra. Before I could voice my defiance, the first hunter's hand clamped around my wrist again, and a cold, insidious energy began to seep into my arm, spreading like a venomous chill. My power, already weakened, sputtered, recoiling from the invasive force. It was like a parasite, feeding on my essence, drawing out the very life force that fueled my abilities. I cried out, a sound that was stolen by the vastness of the chamber. The pain was excruciating, not a physical pain, but a deep, soul-wrenching agony, as my connection to the elements, to the world, was systematically severed. It was as if every nerve ending was being scraped raw, every fiber of my being unraveling. "This is necessary," the first hunter communicated, its mental voice as flat and emotionless as before. "To cleanse the wolf's taint, to bring you into alignment with your true purpose." The cleansing. They were stripping away my will, my connection to the life I knew, to make me a tool, an extension of their dark power. I fought it, struggled against it with every fiber of my being, but my resistance was futile. My strength was ebbing, my power fading into a faint, distant whisper. As the last vestiges of my elemental connection flickered and died, a profound emptiness settled within me. The vibrant hum was gone, replaced by a hollow void. I felt disconnected, adrift, a mere shell of my former self. My vision blurred, the eerie green light of the fungi fading into a suffocating darkness. I collapsed, my body unable to bear the weight of the violation. The last thing I heard, before darkness claimed me completely, was the ancient, resonating voice of the first hunter. "She will awaken, and she will be one of us." I awoke to an oppressive silence, the kind that presses in on your ears, thick and heavy. The air was cold, stale, and tasted faintly of dust and something metallic. My head throbbed with a dull ache, and my body felt like lead, each limb heavy and unresponsive. The vibrant hum that had once been a constant companion, a testament to my connection to the world, was gone, replaced by an aching void, an emptiness that settled deep in my chest. It was a profound loss, a phantom limb that ached with its absence. I was lying on a cold, smooth slab of stone in a small, enclosed chamber. The walls were made of the same dark crystalline material that pulsed with a faint energy. There were no windows, no visible exits, only the faint, sickly green glow of the luminescent fungi clinging to the crevices in the stone. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the numbness. I was a prisoner. My power, my identity, had been stripped away. I was truly helpless, a human in a world of beings far beyond my comprehension. The door, if it could be called that, shimmered into existence, a distortion in the crystalline wall. The first hunter, the one who had abducted me, glided into the chamber. Its silver eyes, as unsettling as ever, fixed on me. "You are awake," its ancient voice echoed in my mind, devoid of any warmth or emotion. "Good. We begin your re-education." "Re-education?" I croaked, my voice hoarse, barely a whisper. "You stole my power. You stole me. You were misguided." The first hunter communicated, its tone flat, entangled with the crude, beastly ways of the wolves. "Your true purpose is with us. To serve the ancient balance, to wield the true power of the Shapers, unburdened by attachments." It began my education with a chilling thoroughness. Days, or perhaps weeks' time, became a meaningless concept in the cavern's perpetual gloom, blended into an agonizing blur of mental conditioning. They bombarded my mind with their history, their philosophy, their twisted version of the ancient Shaper lore. They taught me that the wolves were a primitive, unstable species, that their connection to the land was crude, their emotions chaotic and dangerous. They painted themselves as the true guardians of the earth, the silent arbiters of cosmic balance. And my power, they insisted, was meant to be wielded with cold precision, devoid of the messy, unpredictable human emotions. They tried to sever my memories, to rewrite my past. They focused on my time with the Silverwood Pack, on Ethan, on my parents, on every bond I held dear. They tried to make me believe that these connections were weaknesses, chains that bound me, preventing me from reaching my full potential. I fought them, silently, relentlessly. I clung to every memory, every feeling, every face. I'd built walls in my mind, fortresses around my most cherished moments, though the effort was immense and the mental assault was relentless. During these lessons, they would periodically test me, attempting to reactivate my power, but always under their control. They would direct my focus, demand specific elemental manipulations, and when I faltered, the searing pain would return, a punishment for my resistance, for my lingering connection to the wolf taint. One session, they forced me to focus on creating a localized tremor. My body trembled, the memory of the familiar hum a taunting echo. I struggled, my mind resisting their mental commands. The first hunter intensified the pain, a cold, sharp agony that sliced through my thoughts. "Release the wolf's embrace," its voice commanded. "Embrace your true nature." I clenched my teeth, tears blurring my vision. I saw Ethan's face in my mind, his fierce loyalty, his unwavering belief in me. I saw my mother's gentle smile, my father's quiet strength. They were not weaknesses. They were my anchors. Despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, I refused to fully yield. A small, defiant spark remained, hidden deep within the ashes of my stolen power. I knew that if they succeeded in breaking my mind, in severing my emotional ties, I would truly be lost. Then came the physical training, a stark contrast to their mental assaults. They would force me to perform feats of control, to manipulate the limited elements within the chamber under intense pressure. I learned to draw upon the ambient energy of the cavern, to mold the shadows, to harness the faint vibrations in the crystalline walls. It was a cold, detached power, devoid of the natural vibrancy I had once known, but it was power nonetheless. They were teaching me to use my gift, not for defense, but for control, for suppression. My body grew leaner, stronger, my reflexes honed to a razor's edge. But my spirit grew colder, a hard shell forming around the vulnerable core of my identity. I learned to mimic obedience, to feign compliance, all the while nourishing the ember of defiance that stubbornly refused to die. One cycle, as the first hunter directed me to drain the ambient energy from a small, glowing crystal. A faint memory, a whisper from the forbidden scrolls, flickered in my mind. When the balance is disturbed, when the shadows lengthen and the moon bleeds crimson, the shapers shall awaken. I remembered the crimson moon. I remembered the war. The war. The Silverwood Pack. What was happening to them? Had the Ironwood Pack returned? Was Ethan safe? The thought spurred a hidden burst of adrenaline, a desperate surge of resolve. I had to escape. I had to get back to them. The first hunter, sensing a subtle shift in my focus, tightened its mental grip, sending a sharp jolt of pain through my head. Your thoughts wander. It communicated. Focus. There is only the purpose. There is only us. I fought to keep my expression blank, to conceal the nascent rebellion within me. They wanted me to forget. They wanted me to become one of them. But I remembered. I remembered the warmth of the sun, the scent of the forest, the loyalty of my pack. And I remembered the one who had stood by me, even when I was broken. Ethan. My re-education, in their twisted perception, was progressing. But they were blind to the hidden fire, the simmering rebellion that grew stronger with each forced lesson. They had stolen my power, but they couldn't steal my will. Not yet. Days bled into weeks, weeks into an eternity within the cold, shadowed confines of the first hunter's cavern. My body became a tool, trained to respond to their every mental command, to wield the diminished echoes of my power with a chilling efficiency. I could manipulate the air, create localized gravitational shifts, even draw upon the ambient darkness to shroud myself. But it was a hollow power, devoid of the vibrant connection to nature I once knew, devoid of the warmth of intention. It was a cold, precise instrument, detached from my soul. My mind, however, remained a battleground. They continued their relentless psychological assault, weaving their distorted truths into the fabric of my memories, attempting to sever the emotional cords that bound me to my past. They showed me visions of wolves tearing each other apart, of pack loyalty dissolving into savage brutality, all to illustrate their belief in the inherent instability of my former life. They argued that their way, the path of absolute control and emotionless precision, was the only true path to stability, to order. I resisted, my will a defiant ember in the face of their icy assault. I learned to compartmentalize, to create mental barriers, to hold on to the warmth of my memories like hidden treasures. Ethan's laugh, my mother's gentle touch, the proud gleam in my father's eyes, these were the fortifications around my true self. The pain of their cleansing sessions, the agonizing drain on my energy, became a perverse form of mental exercise, sharpening my focus, strengthening my resolve. One cycle, the first hunter led me to a vast dark chamber where other shapers, older and seemingly more powerful, moved with a silent grace. Their eyes, like my captors, held that same unsettling silver light, devoid of warmth or emotion. They were practicing their own manipulations, bending light, solidifying shadows into tangible forms, creating illusory landscapes that flickered in and out of existence. "Observe," the first hunter communicated, its voice resonating with cold pride. "This is the true potential of our kind, unburdened by the attachments that weaken the wolves. We are the architects of reality, the weavers of cosmic threads." As I watched them, a flicker of understanding, a chilling revelation, began to form. Their power was immense, undeniable, but it was also sterile, cold, disconnected. They could create, but they lacked the spark of true life, the vibrant, chaotic energy that flowed through the natural world. They were like skilled artisans, crafting perfect but lifeless replicas. It was then that I truly understood the depth of their philosophy and the horrific cost of their cleansing. They didn't just want my power, they wanted to strip away my very humanity, my capacity for emotion, for connection. They wanted to turn me into one of them, a powerful, emotionless tool. A deep, quiet fury simmered within me. I would not let them win. I would not become like them. My memories, my feelings, my inherent empathy, these were not weaknesses. They were my strength. My training became a dual effort. Outwardly, I complied, mastering the techniques they taught me, honing my control over the sterile, suppressed elements. Inwardly, I plotted. I began to observe their patterns, their weaknesses, the subtle tells in their otherwise emotionless demeanor. They were powerful, yes, but their detachment made them predictable, rigid. They lacked adaptability, the spontaneous ingenuity that came from true feeling. I noticed that their power seemed to ebb and flow with a strange, dark rhythm, mirroring the pulsating crystal in the central chamber. It was their source, their anchor. If I could disrupt that, my focus shifted during my lessons. When they commanded me to drain energy from a crystal, I subtly practiced siphoning just a fraction more, a minute amount for my own use, storing it, hiding it deep within my own core. It was a painstaking, dangerous process, a constant battle against their watchful mental presence. But gradually, painstakingly, a tiny spark of my original power, the true, vibrant hum, began to reawaken, buried beneath layers of their imposed conditioning. One cycle, while practicing the creation of localized shadows to obscure vision, I felt a faint tremor. It wasn't the internal tremor of my power, but an external vibration. The first hunters, usually so attuned to their environment, seemed momentarily distracted, their mental presences less focused. "An anomaly," one of the elder shapers communicated, its voice a rare flicker of something akin to concern. "A resonance outside our detection." My heart leaped. It was familiar. It was the Silverwood pack. They were close. They were searching for me. A surge of fierce hope, forbidden and dangerous, coursed through me, invigorating the tiny spark of my original power. The first hunters, their focus momentarily fractured, communicated amongst themselves, their mental voices a flurry of cold calculations. The war with the wolves, it seemed, had escalated, and now it was encroaching upon their hidden domain. This was my chance. I had to act. I had to reconnect with my true power, to remember who I was, to escape this living tomb. The knowledge that my pack was near, that Ethan was out there, searching, risking everything, fueled my resolve. They had tried to strip me bare, to erase my identity, but they had failed. I was Lyra, and I was going home. The hum of the Silverwood pack, faint and distant, yet undeniably present, was a beacon in the suffocating darkness of the cavern. It was a familiar melody against the discordant chorus of the first hunter's oppressive energy. My heart, which had felt like a hollow drum for so long, began to beat with renewed purpose. The first hunters, their focus now fractured between my re-education and the escalating external threat, became slightly less vigilant. Their mental presences, once a constant smothering blanket, now occasionally wavered, their attention diverted to the encroaching war outside. This fleeting distraction was all I needed. I continued my outward compliance, performing the tasks they set for me with a newfound precision that pleased them. But beneath the facade, I secretly nurtured the stolen fragments of energy, slowly, painstakingly, coaxing the tiny spark of my original power back to life. It was like tending a dying ember, shielding it from the biting wind, carefully adding fuel. The first hunter who had abducted me, the one I had come to call my mentor, continued its mental conditioning, its voice a constant drone in my mind, attempting to erase my memories, to instill their cold, emotionless philosophy. But now, as it spoke of the wolf pack's perceived chaos and weakness, my inner resolve solidified. They viewed emotion as a flaw, a vulnerability. I now saw it as my greatest strength, the very thing that made me human, that connected me to my world. One cycle, as the cavern vibrated with a stronger, closer tremor, the distinct thud of large wolf paws on the earth, the first hunter's mental presence momentarily flickered, a subtle crack in its impenetrable shield. In that fleeting instant, I saw it, not with my eyes, but with an inner vision. A glimpse of the cavern's true entrance, a hidden passage known only to them, concealed by layers of intricate elemental manipulation. It was a swift, almost imperceptible transfer of knowledge, an unintended consequence of their distraction. This was it, my chance. My next lesson involved creating a powerful localized distortion in the air, a shimmering illusion meant to confuse and disorient. I nodded, feigning obedience, and extended my hands. The air shimmered, not with the cold, sterile effect they expected, but with a sudden, overwhelming surge of vibrant energy, infused with the chaotic, uncontrolled power I had been secretly cultivating. The chamber filled with a blinding flash of light, followed by a deafening, disorienting screech that vibrated through the very crystalline walls. It was the raw power of a shaper, unfiltered, untamed, unleashed. The first hunter recoiled, its shadowy form flickering, its mental presence recoiling in shock and disorientation. The other shadowy figures in the chamber cried out, their own forms wavering under the assault. I seized the moment, pushing all of my stored energy into a single, focused burst. The walls of the chamber, the crystalline structures that had held me captive, groaned and cracked, a low, guttural protest echoing through the cavern. The very ground trembled, the foundations of their hidden sanctuary shuddering under the force of my unleashed power. Chaos erupted. The first hunters, unaccustomed to such raw, untamed energy, struggled to regain control. Their cold, precise manipulations faltered, their mental commands dissolving into a panicked cacophony. I used their confusion, their momentary disorientation, to my advantage. I focused on the hidden passage. The image of its complex elemental locks burned into my mind. With a desperate, burning intensity, I pushed, directing all of my reawakened power, not just to disrupt, but to unravel, to dismantle. The layers of elemental shielding, the intricate network of their protective magic, began to fray, to tear apart. The first hunter, recovering from the initial shock, let out a silent roar of fury. Its silver eyes blazed, and a wave of dark, oppressive energy slammed into me, attempting to extinguish my power once more. But this time, I was ready. This time, I had a purpose. I met its assault with a defiant surge of my own power, the vibrant, chaotic energy of life clashing against its cold, sterile force. The cavern groaned, the very air vibrating with the intensity of our clash. I felt my power flicker, drain, but I clung to it, fueled by my desperate need to escape, to return to my pack, to Ethan. With a final, desperate push, I shattered the elemental locks. The concealed entrance shimmered, revealing a blinding shaft of natural moonlight, a beacon of hope in the oppressive darkness. She escapes. The first hunter's voice thundered in my mind, filled with a raw fury I hadn't known it possessed. Stop her! But it was too late. I sprinted towards the light, my legs burning, my lungs aching. The shadowy figures lunged, but I created a localized tremor, sending the ground beneath them buckling, throwing them off balance. I conjured a blinding flash of light, forcing them to shield their eyes. I was no longer a victim, but a force of nature, a tempest of defiance. I burst out of the cavern, gasping for breath, the cool night air a sweet balm on my skin. The forest, familiar and welcoming, stretched out before me, bathed in the soft glow of the moon. And then I heard it, closer this time, clearer. The mournful, searching howl of a wolf. Ethan! I ran, my legs propelling me forward, a new energy surging through me. The hum of my power, though still recovering, felt different now. It was no longer a suppressed whisper, but a defiant roar, a testament to my survival. I was Lyra, the shaper who couldn't be broken, the one who fought for her memories, for her bonds, for her identity. And I was going home. The forest, once a place of terrifying uncertainty, now felt like a welcoming embrace. The moon, a full luminous orb in the night sky, seemed to guide my path. The air, crisp and cool, carried the scent of pine and damp earth, a comforting aroma that filled my lungs with renewed vigor. I ran, not just with my legs, but with every fiber of my being, propelled by the desperate hope of reunion. And then I heard it again, closer this time, resonating deep within my chest, a distinct, powerful howl. It was Kale, my father, leading the search party, and woven within his roar, a distinct, anxious whine, Ethan's wolf. My heart leaped, a joyous surge of adrenaline pushing me faster. I burst into a small clearing, my eyes scanning the shadows. A massive black wolf, unmistakable, was silhouetted against the moonlight, his amber eyes burning with a desperate search. Kale. And beside him, a slightly smaller, sleeker wolf, his fur the color of burnished gold, his every movement radiating a worried tension. Ethan. They froze, their heads snapping towards me, their powerful bodies tensing. For a moment, they simply stared, their wolf instincts processing the impossible. A human, emerging from the depths of the forest they had been tirelessly searching. Then, Kale shifted, his human form appearing in a swirl of shimmering light and tearing fabric. His face, etched with exhaustion and worry, morphed into an expression of profound shock, then overwhelming relief. "Lyra!" he roared, his voice thick with emotion. Ethan, a fraction of a second later, shifted as well, his eyes wide with disbelief and a raw, vulnerable joy. He didn't speak, he simply surged forward, his arms wrapping around me in a crushing embrace. I buried my face in his shoulder, tears finally streaming down my face, hot and real against my cold skin. His scent, pine and clean earth, was a potent balm to my soul, grounding me, reminding me that this was real. "I knew it," he whispered, his voice hoarse, his grip tightening. "I knew you weren't gone." My father approached, his strong hands cupping my face, his gaze searching, assessing. "Are you all right? What happened? Where have you been?" His eyes fell on my wrist, where a faint, dark mark, a remnant of the first hunter's chilling touch, still lingered. His brow furrowed with concern. I pulled back from Ethan, still clinging to his hand, and tried to explain, the words tumbling out in a rush of relief and lingering terror. I told them about the cavern, the shadowy figures, their mental assaults, their attempts to strip me of my power, to erase my memories. I described the cleansing, the agonizing void, the hollow power they had forced upon me. And I told them about the first hunter's purpose, their cold, ancient mission to control and harness shapers for their own twisted version of cosmic balance. Kale's face grew grimmer with every word, his eyes blazing with a protective fury. These beings, they exist outside the old lore. They are a threat to all of us, not just shapers, but to wolves, to all life. They called themselves the first hunters, I added, a shiver running through me. And they are ancient. They have been hunting shapers for millennia, forcing them into their service, or destroying them. Ethan, his arm still around me, looked from me to his father, his expression hardening. They wanted to turn her into one of them, an emotionless weapon. They failed, I stated, my voice firm, a new strength flowing through me. They tried to break me, but they couldn't. My connection to the earth, to life, it's different now. It's been through a crucible, but it's stronger. I focused, and a small, vibrant spark of light danced in the palm of my hand, a symbol of my reawakened, reforged power. The scent of more wolves, a larger contingent of our pack warriors, began to filter through the clearing. They emerged from the tree line, their faces grim, their eyes weary from the search. They saw me, the human who had vanished, now standing between their Alpha and Alpha 2B, a strange light in my eyes. Whispers began to ripple through their ranks, not of pity now, but of awe and fierce loyalty. Kale addressed them, his voice booming through the clearing. "The Ironwood Pack is not our only enemy. There is a new threat, an ancient evil that preys on those of unique power. Lyra has been in their clutches. She has fought them, and she has returned, stronger than ever." He paused, his gaze sweeping over each warrior. "She is not a Luna in the way we expected, but she is our protector. She is our strength, and we will defend her and ourselves from all who seek to harm us." A chorus of growls and barks of agreement erupted from the wolves, a resounding affirmation of their loyalty. My heart swelled with gratitude. They accepted me. They saw me, not as broken, but as Lyra, whole and powerful in my own way. But the war was far from over. The first hunters, enraged by my escape, would undoubtedly pursue me. The Ironwood Pack, still seeking vengeance, would likely return. I was no longer just fighting for my own survival. I was fighting for the survival of my pack, for the very balance of our world. My power, now infused with the fierce determination born of my ordeal, felt sharper, more focused, less chaotic. I was no longer just reacting, I was ready to choose my battles. The reunion with my pack was a mixture of overwhelming relief and a grim acknowledgement of the escalating threats. The immediate exhilaration of my escape slowly gave way to the sobering reality of the war. The first hunters, their cold fury a tangible presence even in my mind, would undoubtedly come for me. Their power was ancient, formidable, and their methods ruthless. And the Ironwood pack, weakened but not defeated, remained a tangible, immediate danger. The Silverwood pack, however, rallied around me with a fierce loyalty that warmed me to my core. My status had shifted dramatically. I was no longer an anomaly, a source of quiet shame. I was a weapon, an asset, a living legend. The elders, though still cautious, acknowledged the undeniable truth of my power. My father, Kale, consulted me on defensive strategies, incorporating my unique abilities into their battle plans. My bond with Ethan, while no longer romantic, had deepened into an unbreakable partnership. He was my rock, my confidant, my silent protector. He understood the nuances of my power, the mental strain it caused, and he was unwavering in his support. We spent hours together, strategizing, training, preparing. He pushed me to refine my control, to integrate my elemental manipulations seamlessly with the Wolfpack's traditional combat tactics. "Think of it as an extension of your senses, Lyra," Ethan would say, his wolf form a blur of speed as he demonstrated a flanking maneuver. "You can feel the earth, the wind. Use it to anticipate, to disorient, to create openings." I learned to shift small pockets of air to create momentary vacuums around an attacker, to intensify sounds to create a distracting cacophony, to subtly alter gravity in a localized area to throw off a charging bray. Wolf's balance. My power was not brute force, but precision, disruption, and subtle control. Our intelligence network reported increased activity from both the Ironwood pack and, more disturbingly, strange, unexplained phenomena in the deeper, untamed regions of the forest, unnatural shadows, sudden shifts in weather patterns, and an unnerving silence that fell over certain areas. The first hunters were indeed searching. One evening, as we gathered for a strategy meeting in the central hall, the air grew thick with a chilling cold, and a shadow seemed to lengthen unnaturally even in the flickering torchlight. A presence, cold and ancient, slammed into my mind, a familiar, unwelcome intrusion. "You cannot escape us, Lyra," the first hunter's voice echoed in my thoughts, colder, more menacing than before. "You belong to the balance. You will be returned to your rightful place." Panic flickered in my chest, quickly extinguished by a surge of defiant anger. They had found me. Kale, sensing my distress, turned to me, his gaze sharp. "What is it, Lyra?" "They're here," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "The first hunters. They're coming." A collective gasp swept through the hall. Fear, palpable and chilling, gripped the pack. The threat of the Ironwood pack was one thing, but this was an enemy beyond their understanding, beyond their physical capabilities. Kale, ever the alpha, roared, "Prepare for battle. Alert the patrols. Protect the young and the elders." But the first hunter's voice echoed again, this time not just in my mind, but a chilling whisper that seemed to permeate the very air of the hall, accessible to all. "We are not here for the wolves. We are here for the Shaper. Surrender her, and you will be spared." A tense silence descended. All eyes turned to me. The offer was clear. Sacrifice me, and the pack would be safe. My heart ached. I could feel their fear, their desperation. They were loyal, but they were also pragmatists. The survival of the pack was paramount. Before anyone could speak, Ethan stepped forward, placing himself squarely in front of me, his eyes blazing with defiant fury. He shifted, his magnificent wolf form a powerful shield. "We will not surrender her," he snarled, his voice a guttural roar that vibrated through the hall. "She is one of us. She is our family." Kale, his gaze unwavering, shifted as well, his black fur bristling, his roar joining Ethan's. "The Silverwood Pack protects its own. We will fight." Their unwavering loyalty, their fierce protectiveness, brought tears to my eyes. This was my family. This was what I fought for. The walls of the pack house groaned as the invisible presence of the first hunters pressed in. The air grew colder, and spectral shadows began to writhe along the edges of the hall, coalescing into vaguely humanoid shapes. The first hunters were here, and they were preparing to breach our defenses. "It begins," I whispered, my hand reaching for Ethan's wolf form, my fingers brushing his fur. A surge of defiant power erupted within me, no longer cold and detached, but infused with the warmth of my pack's loyalty, with the fierce love that had been stripped away and then painstakingly rebuilt. I raised my hands, my eyes burning with a newfound resolve. The first hunters wanted me. They would have to come through my pack, and I would make them regret it. The air in the pack house crackled with a malevolent energy, the chilling presence of the first hunters pressing in on all sides. The spectral shadows began to solidify, flickering into distinct humanoid forms, their silver eyes burning with an eerie glow. They were not merely attacking, they were infiltrating, phasing through the very walls, their power cold and insidious. Kale and Ethan, magnificent in their wolf forms, stood their ground, their roars of defiance echoing through the hall. Our warriors, a formidable phalanx of teeth and claws, snarled their readiness, their eyes burning with a fierce determination. But the first hunters were not creatures of flesh and blood in the traditional sense. Their movements were fluid, their forms ethereal, their power designed to bypass physical barriers. "They are phasing through the walls," I yelled, my voice cutting through the snarls and growls. "Their forms are not fully solid. We need to disrupt their energy, not just their physical manifestation." I focused, my reforged power surging, no longer struggling against the first hunter's oppressive presence, but meeting it head-on. The familiar hum, once a silent whisper, now resonated with a powerful, vibrant thrum, fueled by the unwavering loyalty of my pack. I reached out, extending my senses, feeling the delicate threads of energy that comprised the first hunter's forms. With a surge of my will, I slammed a wave of pure kinetic energy, not at their physical manifestations, but at the subtle, energetic vibrations that held their forms together. The first hunters recoiled, their shadowy forms flickering violently, their movements momentarily disrupted. A few of them even cried out, their silent mental voices replaced by guttural, raw sounds of surprise and pain. "They are vulnerable to focused energy disruption," I shouted, my voice rising above the din. "Target their resonance." Kale, with his alpha's cunning, immediately understood. He let out a piercing howl, a command that reverberated through the hall. Our warriors, trained in precision and adapting quickly to battlefield changes, shifted their focus. They no longer blindly lunged, but instead focused their attacks, concentrating their wolf energy, their very essence, at the flickering forms of the first hunters. It was an unconventional tactic, a blend of primal wolf power and elemental manipulation. A first hunter, its shadowy form wavering, attempted to phase through a wall directly behind Ethan. I saw it, felt its cold presence, and without a moment's hesitation, created a powerful, localized pressure field, forcing it to materialize, to become momentarily solid. Ethan, reacting with lightning speed, wheeled around and slammed into it, his powerful jaws snapping shut around its ethereal limb. The first hunter shrieked, a sound that grated on the mind, and its form dissipated, scattering into motes of shadow. It was a momentary victory, but a victory nonetheless. We had found their weakness. They could be disrupted, their forms broken. More first hunters poured into the hall, their numbers seemingly endless. They moved with a chilling synchronization, attempting to overwhelm us with sheer force of numbers. Their silver eyes, devoid of emotion, gleamed with a cold determination. One of them lunged at me, its hand reaching out, intending to reestablish its draining grip. I met its advance, my power surging. This time, I didn't just disrupt. I twisted the energy around it, not pushing it away, but bending it, turning it back on itself. The first hunter staggered, its own oppressive energy recoiling, burning it from within. It screamed. A silent, agonizing mental shriek, and its form dissolved into nothingness, leaving behind only a lingering chill. It was a devastating blow, a profound shock to their cold, analytical minds. They were accustomed to absolute control, to effortless manipulation. My raw, chaotic power, born of emotion and defiance, was anathema to them. But even as we fought, a new threat emerged. The very earth outside the pack house began to tremble, not with my intentional tremors, but with the unmistakable vibrations of a massive approaching force. The Ironwood pack, their howls distinct and menacing, echoed through the night, closer, louder, more numerous than ever before. We were trapped, surrounded. The first hunters were attacking from within, their insidious power threatening to overwhelm us, and the Ironwood pack, fueled by vengeance, was pounding at our physical defenses. Kale's roar of defiance was tinged with desperation. "To the main hall! We make our stand there! Protect Lyra!" My father understood. My power was vital. I was the key to fighting the first hunters. But we couldn't fight both simultaneously. I looked at Ethan, his wolf form panting, his fur matted with dust and sweat. His eyes met mine, a silent understanding passing between us. He trusted me. He believed in me. "I have an idea," I said, my voice urgent, strained. "But I need to get outside. I need to make a statement." Kale, his wolf eyes scanning the chaotic scene, hesitated for only a second. "Go. We will hold them as long as we can." With a nod, Ethan turned, his powerful wolf form clearing a path for me through the swirling shadows and snarling wolves. I sprinted towards the main entrance, leaving the desperate battle behind me. My heart hammered against my ribs, a mixture of fear and adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was it, the ultimate test. I was not just fighting for my pack. I was fighting for the very right to exist as I was, a shaper who refused to be broken. I burst through the main doors of the pack house, the sudden rush of cool night air a stark contrast to the oppressive battle-filled atmosphere within. The full moon, a luminous sentinel in the inky sky, cast long, eerie shadows across the clearing. The scent of fear, of aggressive wolf musk, and the metallic tang of blood filled the air. The Ironwood pack. They were here, hundreds of them, their eyes glinting with predatory hunger. Their leader, a hulking brute with a scarred muzzle, stood at the forefront, his massive form radiating raw power and fury. He had recovered from his previous encounter with me, and his eyes, fixed on me, burned with a cold, vengeful hatred. He recognized me. He remembered the inexplicable force that had shattered his confidence. "The human!" he roared, his voice a guttural rumble that shook the ground. "You will pay for what you did." A sea of snarling wolves surged forward, their intent clear: to overwhelm, to destroy. but I didn't flinch. I stood my ground, my feet planted firmly on the earth, my hands outstretched, my eyes burning with a fierce, unwavering resolve. This was my stand. This was my declaration. The hum of my power resonated throughout my entire being, no longer confined, no longer suppressed. It was a torrent of raw, untamed energy, drawn from the very heart of the earth, from the swirling winds, from the luminous moon above. I was a conduit, a living nexus of elemental forces. I drew upon the earth beneath my feet, feeling its ancient strength, its unwavering stability. With a silent command, the ground before me began to buckle and churn, not with small localized tremors, but with a mighty geological upheaval. Massive fissures ripped through the earth, deep chasms that swallowed trees whole, creating an impassable barrier between my pack house and the advancing ironwood horde. The wolves stumbled, yelping in surprise and fear, their charge halted by the sudden, terrifying transformation of the terrain. The ironwood leader, his scarred muzzle contorted in disbelief, roared in frustration. He lunged, attempting to leap across a widening chasm, but I met his challenge with a surge of wind, not a gentle gust, but a howling gale, a force of nature that buffeted him, spun him, and slammed him back against the bokor. Splintered earth. My power surged, fueled by the desperation of the moment, by the fierce protectiveness of my pack, by the chilling memory of my captivity. I reached for the sky, and the calm night air curdled into a swirling vortex of wind, sharp and cutting, whipping around the ironwood wolves, disorienting them, blinding them with dust and debris. Lightning, born of pure will, cracked across the sky, illuminating my form in a blinding flash, a terrifying display of raw power. The ironwood wolves, creatures of instinct and brute force, were overwhelmed. They understood physical combat, but this was beyond their comprehension. They were facing an enemy they couldn't fight, an enemy that wielded the very elements against them. Fear, primal and potent, began to spread through their ranks. Their confident advance devolved into a panicked scramble. The ironwood leader, battered and bruised, finally understood. He let out a howl, not of aggression, but of retreat. His pack, shattered and demoralized, turned and fled. A chaotic wave of panicked fur and desperate whines, disappearing back into the depths of the forest. Silence descended upon the clearing, broken only by my ragged breathing and the faint sounds of continued struggle from within the pack house. I had repelled the ironwood pack, but the battle within still raged. I turned, my gaze piercing the walls of the pack house, feeling the chaotic clash of energies within. The first hunters, unburdened by physical forms, were still a formidable threat. They were unaffected by the elemental barrage I had unleashed outside. Their cold, ancient power was specifically designed to counter my own. I took a deep breath, focusing, gathering my remaining strength. My connection to the earth, to the wind, to the raw essence of life, was still vibrant, still powerful. But now, I knew I had to use it differently, not just to repel, but to cleanse, to restore balance. I pushed open the damaged doors, the sounds of battle crashing over me once more. Kale and Ethan, their fur matted, their muscles straining, were fighting a desperate battle against the insidious, phasing forms of the first hunters. Our warriors, Boo Valiant, were faltering, their physical attacks ineffective against the ethereal invaders. The first hunters, sensing my return, turned their silver eyes on me, their collective mental voice a chorus of cold fury. The Shaper returns. You cannot defeat us. Your power is crude. Ours is absolute. My power is life, I countered, my voice resonating with a newfound confidence. Yours is stagnation. You seek to control, to suppress. I seek to protect, to create. I raised my hands, not to unleash another elemental barrage, but to channel something different, something more profound. I drew upon the raw, vibrant energy of the life force that permeated the forest, the pure, untainted essence of the earth, the very lifeblood of the world. It was a terrifying gamble, a desperate attempt to counter that cold, draining power with its absolute opposite. A shimmering wave of pure, golden light erupted from my hands, not blinding, but cleansing, restorative. It was the antithesis of their shadow, the warmth of creation against that icy void. The golden light washed over the first hunters, and they shrieked, not with anger, but with agony. Their shadowy forms writhed, flickering, dissolving under the onslaught of pure, vibrant energy. They were being unmade, unraveling into nothingness, as the life force overwhelmed their sterile existence. One by one, the first hunters dissolved, their chilling mental voices silenced, their silver eyes extinguished. The cold, oppressive aura that had permeated the pack house dissipated, replaced by the familiar sense of pine and wolf and the lingering smell of dust and battle. When the last of the first hunters vanished, the silence that followed was profound, absolute. Cale and Ethan, their forms shimmering as they shifted back to human, stared at the space where the shadowy figures had been, their faces etched with awe and exhaustion. I stood in the center of the hall, my body trembling with exhaustion, my power spent, but my heart filled with a triumphant, overwhelming sense of peace. I had faced them. I had defied them. And I had won. The aftermath of the dual battle was a surreal blend of devastation and profound relief. The pack house, though battered, stood. The Ironwood pack had been repelled, and the first hunters, those ancient, chilling beings, had been vanquished, their dark presence utterly erased. The silence that followed their dissolution was absolute, a void where their oppressive energy had once been. The Silverwood pack, bruised but not broken, slowly began to pick themselves up. Injured wolves were tended to, their human forms appearing, their wounds grim, but their eyes filled with a mixture of awe and fierce loyalty towards me. My parents, exhausted but unharmed, rushed to my side, their embraces warm and comforting, their gazes filled with a love and pride that transcended words. Ethan, his arms still around me, his body weary but his eyes shining with triumph, looked at me with an intensity that spoke volumes. The fractured bond between us, which had been a subtle hum, now resonated with a powerful, undeniable strength. It was no longer the bond of fated mates, but something deeper, something forged in shared battle, in mutual respect, in a profound understanding of each other's inherent power. It was a bond of kinship, of partnership, of something irrevocably true. "You saved us, Lyra," Cale said, his voice husky with emotion, his strong hand resting on my shoulder. You saved us. All. I looked around at the battered faces of my pack, at the remnants of the fierce battle, and a profound sense of belonging washed over me. I wasn't a Luna in the traditional sense, but I was their protector, their unconventional shield. I had found my purpose, not in fulfilling an expectation, but in embracing my true self. In the days that followed, the pack slowly healed. The fear of the Ironwood pack diminished, replaced by a renewed sense of confidence. And the threat of the first hunters, once an unseen, existential dread, was gone. The dark mark on my wrist, the chilling reminder of my captivity, began to fade, slowly healing into a faint, silvery scar. My power, though it had been pushed to its limits, began to recover, settling into a new, more refined state. It was no longer the wild, unpredictable force of my early days, nor the cold, detached energy of my captivity. It was something else entirely, a balanced, controlled power, infused with the vibrant energy of life and the unwavering resolve of my spirit. I could still manipulate the elements, but now with a precision and grace that was a testament to my ordeal. My connection to the world was deeper, more nuanced, a constant symphony of life flowing through me. The pack elders, particularly Old Man Thorn, approached me with a newfound respect, their eyes no longer wary, but filled with reverence. "The ancient texts spoke of balance, Lyra," he rasped, his voice filled with newfound understanding. "Of light and shadow, you have restored the balance. You are the bridge between worlds." His words resonated deeply. I was indeed a bridge, not just between the human and wolf worlds, but between the ancient powers of the Shapers and the modern realities of the packs. My relationship with Ethan evolved into a unique partnership. We trained together, not just for battle, but for understanding. He taught me the intricacies of wolf pack dynamics, the subtle currents of loyalty and leadership. I, in turn, helped him understand the broader, unseen energies of the world, the delicate balance of the elements. We became a formidable force, two halves of a different, yet equally powerful, whole. The topic of a new Luna, which had once been a source of such pain and awkwardness, no longer held any sting. The pack understood. They didn't need a Luna who could shift, they needed a protector, a leader, a force for good. They had me. My role was not traditional, but it was vital. I became the silent guardian, the strategist, the one who saw beyond the physical, who felt the unseen currents of the world. I worked alongside Kale, offering insights, predicting threats, and my unconventional abilities became an integral part of the Silverwood Pack's defense and prosperity. Years passed. The Silverwood Pack thrived, respected and feared in equal measure by their neighbors. The Ironwood Pack, humbled by their defeat, kept their distance. The first hunters remained a chilling memory, a dark chapter in my life, but one that had ultimately forged me into something stronger, more resilient. I was not Luna. I never would be, in the way they had expected. But I was Lyra. I was a shaper. I was a protector. I was a force. And I was exactly where I was meant to be. The journey had been arduous, filled with shame, rejection, capture, and battle. But it had led me to myself, to my true power, and to a purpose far greater than I had ever imagined. The moon still shone, a constant reminder of the world's cycles, and beneath its light, I ran, not as a wolf, but as something else entirely, something ancient, dangerous, and utterly free. And I was home.